It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Argentina's players. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and today we'll be looking at Argentina's squad for the 2022 World Cup. This preamble is going to be the same for every mediacast that we do for players, so those familiar with it can jump ahead a little more than 3 minutes, I would say, to when we begin talking about the team itself. For YouTube watchers, there's a timestamp towards the bottom of the show notes that you can click on and go directly to that point. For those looking for a quick version of this, you can skip to near the end of the mediacast. The last, I've been saying 5 minutes, or it's probably about 8 minutes where we summarize the likely starters. And just prior to that, with about 15 to 20 minutes left, we'll have some discussion on the squad. So the main issues with the squad, how we see their overall strength, and the players and issues to look out for. So we'll put those times in the show notes. And we'll also be doing an edited version of this media cast, making it a shorter version for those who are just looking for an overview. For those looking for a deeper dive, you've come to the right place. We're going to go through the players and how likely they are to make it to the final squad. And we explain why we think so and give information on their history and standing with the squad. So the way we do this is first by organizing the players into their designated position. It should be noted that these are a bit artificial since players don't always play in their coded position, but it's nevertheless a good way to organize the discussion. And then we go through the players and share some of the data we've collected in our files. And using that data, we try to predict how likely the player is to make the team. And that's based mostly on their recent participation, but we take a couple of other factors into account. And then we categorize the players into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seems to be off the squad. And we'll also mention big players who have recently retired and make note of any injuries that we're aware of. So we'll try to determine which players will be starters and which will be substitutes. Right, now for those following on YouTube, we have a very simple graphic that we run where we list the names, and you can actually see how the names are spelled. We may actually mispronounce a few of them. And this is the same broadcast for the audio version, so we're going to try to repeat the names a few times there to help listeners familiarize themselves. And that's as much as we can do to this point. But as the rosters are being published, we will do an updated episode. That'll essentially be going over our predictions, updating them based on any games played to that point. So there are some games between, well, basically our data goes to the end of June. So between then and the Cup. Or when we do our next podcast, the update. And hopefully by that time, the rosters will have come out and we can see who made the preliminary and final rosters. So keep your eye out for those, and that'll probably be for sometime in November. I'm thinking maybe mid-November. All right, well, that's the intro, and we're going to turn our attention to Argentina now. So we did do a podcast for the 2021 Copa America. We didn't do a players podcast there. We just did teams podcast. So most of these takeaways are more about the team than individual players. But we did note in that podcast that Argentina was having some conflict around 2018. It seemed to be between the players and the Football Association. It almost caused Messi to quit the team. However, even by the time of the 2021 Copa America, that seemed to be resolved. So things have been more kind of peaceful on the team from about 2019 or 20, I would say. One other thing we noticed is that Argentina is very anxious to earn a title. They earned their first. The last time they earned a title, either World Cup or Copa America, was in 1993, and they had a lot of disappointments between 1993, up to the present time. However, in 2021. They did win that Copa America, so we'll talk a bit about that at the end and the influence it may have had on the squad. And finally, one thing we brought up is too much Messi. So the question was whether he, as good a player as Messi is, was he influencing things so much? Because prior to the Copa America 2021, everything seemed to have to go through him, and I don't think it was his fault, but it was. It almost seemed like the other players, their talents were stifled, so we'll talk about whether that has been resolved or whether we see that as a problem coming into this cup, and we'll talk about that in our notes at the end. So those are the takeaways from the previous podcast. And now we're going to look at the formations they've been using over the last little while. So they played the Copa America. They played 7 games in the Copa America. And they almost always went with a 4-3-3 formation. I shouldn't say almost always. 4 of the 7 games, they went with a 4-3-3. 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 forwards. For games 3 and 4, those were both group stage games, and they were playing Paraguay and Bolivia, so fairly weak teams. They went with a 4-2-3-1 formation. So maybe that's the formation they use against weaker teams. And perhaps the Game 7 formation, which was against Brazil, the 4-4-2, perhaps that's what they use against stronger teams. I'm just kind of guessing there, guessing about the strong and weak teams. So 4-3-3, 4 times, 4-2-3-1, twice, and 4-4-2 twice. Looking at World Cup qualifying, we see that they actually started with a 4-4-2, and those games were against Venezuela and Bolivia. So much for my idea that that's the formation against a strong team, although they did use it against Brazil in the Cup. And then after that, 2 games, they went with a 4-2-3-1. And then they seem to alternate between that 4-2-3-1 and the 4-3-3, which they actually used a little bit more. So again, those same 3 formations from Copa America were used in World Cup qualifying, and overall they seem to favor a 4-3-3, but sometimes use a 4-2-3-1. Only in the first 2 games did they use the 4-4-2. And they had 2 games during that period, or perhaps after. They had something called a finalissimo with Italy, and that was kind of the champions of Europe against the champions of South America. And for that game, they used a 4-2-3-1. And they also had a friendly where they used a 4-3-3 and tried out a lot of new players in that friendly. So I wouldn't say it has much impact on what formation they'll use coming into this cup. But again, 4-3-3 seems to be their preferred formation. So imagine yourself, most of the time here, we're talking about always 4 defenders at the back. And up front, there may be 1 center forward, but sometimes the wingers push up and there are 3 center forwards. So if you have that picture in your head, this will be a bit easier to follow. All right, let's move on to the actual squad, and we begin with the manager, Lionel, or perhaps Lionel Scaloni. Lionel Scaloni has been a manager since 2018, and he was an assistant manager before that. And prior to that, he was an assistant manager in Sevilla. So actually not that experienced a manager, but if you recall what I said at the beginning, 2018 was around the time they started overcoming what seemed to be conflict on the team. So perhaps he seems to have brought a better kind of spirit or a better collegiality on the team. He himself was a player for Argentina, but only had 7 caps from 2003 to 2006, and he was in the World Cup 2006, but only appeared in 1 game. As far as a manager goes, he has taken Argentina through the 2019 and the 2021 Copa Americas. All right, so Lionel Scaloni, manager of Argentina. Let's move on to goalkeepers now, and I'll just go through the candidates that are on the table here. And basically that means players who have played with the team from about 2020. So any players who dropped off the team before 2020 usually don't appear here. But even the ones we consider to be off the squad have played from about 2020. So we have a definite candidate in Emilio Martinez for goalkeeper, and we have 2 likely candidates in Franco Armani and Juan Musa as a likely candidate. However, he is injured. So I'll just, for the YouTube people, highlight that in a different color just to indicate that problem there. And I'll talk about that injury when we get to him. We have Geronimo Rulli or Geronimo Rulli as a possible candidate, and Esteban Andrada as possible but unlikely, and Augustin Marchizan seems to be off the squad, but he has played actually as late as 2021, which we'll talk about. Okay, let's go back to the beginning and the definite candidate. So Emiliano Martinez, and the reason, I'll begin with the reason why we think he's definite, and that's because he started 9 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was not selected for 2 and was suspended for 2 games. So Emiliano Martinez has been with Argentina just since 2019, so fairly new to the team. He has 17 caps and is 29 years old, and he's currently playing for Aston Villa in England, and he was with Arsenal in England before that, but he was kind of the backup keeper, so he wanted to move to a team where he was the starting keeper. Arsenal even loaned him out to other teams like Getafe in Spain and other teams in England, quite a few loans there. He was actually with Arsenal's youth club from 2010. He had moved over from Independiente in Argentina in 2010. So definite candidate, Emilio Martinez. He was the starter in the 2021 Copa America, which was his first tournament. And actually an interesting detail, he first appeared on the bench for Argentina in June 2011, and then didn't appear again, even on the bench, for 8.5 years. And once he reappeared, he fairly quickly became the starter for the team. Okay, the next candidate is a likely candidate, Franco Armani. So he had started 2 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America and was on the bench for 9 others and injured for the other 2. So he's been with the team since 2018 and has 18 caps. He was actually a late starter with the squad because he's currently 36 years old. So he got his first cap when he was 32 years old. So he plays for River Plate in Argentina, and he also played for Atlético Nacional in Colombia. also. His first tournament was the World Cup 2018, and he was the backup keeper, but he gained the starting position for games 3 and 4 there, after the starting keeper, Willie Caballero, made a terrible error in game 2. So got his opportunity there. However, and he was the starter in the 2019 Copa America. He actually saved a penalty against Uruguay there. And however, he wasn't the starter in the 2021 Copa America, because by that time, Emiliano Martinez had earned the starting keeper spot. So he was just on the bench there, and just came in for the last group stage game 4 in that tournament. Okay, also, well, he was likely, is Juan Musso. So I'll first tell you about his history and then tell you about his injury. So he started one of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was on the bench for 9 of them. Just 3 matches that he was not selected for. And he is also new to the squad, so all goalies from 2018 or later. He came in 2019 and has 2 caps and is 28 years old. And he plays for Atalanta in Italy and played for Udinese in Italy before that. He moved over from Racing Club in Argentina in 2018. So he was on the squad for the 2019 Copa America, but he was on the bench there and also on the bench for the 2021 Copa America. Now, his injury is a fractured jaw, and he's expected back on November 20th, which is very close to the World Cup. So he looks like a touch and go. Perhaps we'll be able to update that, although, you know, a broken jaw is not going to heal a month faster than they expect. So it's going to be close. I suppose if he can't make it, then it'll be the possible candidate, Geronimo Rulli, who will replace him. Geronimo Rulli had returned to the bench after an almost 3-year absence in September of 2021. And he started just 1 game during that period, but he was on the bench for 5 games. And he also has been with the team since 2018 and has 3 caps for the national team and is 30 years old. He plays for Villarreal in Spain and was also in Spain with Real Sociedad before that. But he was loaned out to Montpellier in France and Manchester City in England. No, he wasn't loaned out to Manchester City. He was actually on the roster in 2016 and 17, but I don't believe he played any games for Manchester City, and in fact was loaned out to Real Sociedad the year that he was there. So maybe he was never even on the bench for them. Even though he's been around since 2018, he hasn't managed to make it to a cup yet. In fact, he was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2016 Copa America Centenario, but he didn't make the final cut. And hasn't been able to make a squad. Also selected for the preliminary squad in 2019 there. Okay, so Geronimo Rulli, a possible candidate, and we have possible but unlikely Esteban Andrade. So I won't dwell on him too much. He didn't start any of the games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was on the bench for 2 of them. And he's never played in a tournament for Argentina, even though he's been with them since 2019 and has 4 caps. And he currently plays for Monterrey in Mexico. Augustin Marchisen last appeared for the squad in the 2021 Copa America. So he was actually on the bench both in 2019 and in 2021, but never managed to never managed to get onto the field. So he's off the team now. I won't go into his history, but he's still playing actively for a club in Celta de Vigo in Spain, and he played for Porto before that. So Augustin Marchesen kind of out of the picture right now. So I'll summarize just by giving an overview of what's been happening in the goalkeeper position. But so it was Emiliano Martez for the Copa America, except for one B team game where Armani started. Martinez also played 7 of the 11 World Cup games, and Armani, Musso, and Rulli each had one game in those qualification games, and then Armani played their last 2 games, basically the friendlies, the Finalissimo and the friendly. So I don't know whether that means he's making a bid as the starting keeper, but I wouldn't think so now. But perhaps the upcoming games in September and October will shed some more light. But I don't see any reason really why Martinez would lose his starting position here. Okay, well, that's it for goalkeepers, and we'll move on to defenders. So we'll start with central defenders, and we have Nicolas Otamendi as a definite candidate, and Lisandro Martinez. There are a lot of Martinez's on Argentina, which was a bit confusing during the World Cup if you don't know the players well enough to separate them in your mind. German Pazzelli is also a likely candidate, and a possible candidate is Lucas Martinez Corta. Lucas Martinez Corta, perhaps adding Corta to his name just to distinguish himself from the other Martinezes. We have Christian Romero as a possible candidate, and also possible Marco Senesi. And finally, Facundo Medina, who seems to be off the team. So let's go back to the beginning. And a bit surprisingly, the definite candidate is Nicolas Otamendi, because he's 34 years old. But to me, it's a bit surprising because he really seemed to be looking a bit old in his final couple of years with Manchester City, who he was with till 2020. So he seems to kind of have been refreshed, because I think he was also drifting off the Argentina team for a period, but seems to have reasserted himself. So he started 11 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was suspended for one and not selected for one. So Nicolas Otamendi has been with Argentina since 2009, so a real veteran with 91 caps and 4 goals. And as I mentioned, he's 34 years old. And after Manchester City, who he played for from 2015 to 2020, he moved to Benfica in Portugal. So he's been with them ever since. Before Manchester City, he was with Valencia, and he played in both Brazil and in Argentina. So he's been with a lot of top clubs. That is Mineiro in Brazil he was with, and Vélez Sarsfield in Argentina. So he has been with the team since the 2010 World Cup, where he actually started as a substitute and then came in for the B team game in game 3, and then earned a starting position from there. So he wasn't at the Copa America in 2011 or the 2014 World Cup. He was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2014 World Cup, but didn't make it. But came back to the team for the 2015 and 16 Copa Americas, and then was a starter in the 2018 World Cup and in the 2019 Copa America. Even in 2021, he was a starter, but he didn't start all games. He missed games 3 and 4 there. And Yeah, seems to have kept his position through World Cup qualifying, um, and is a definite candidate. So uh, the veteran Nicholas Otamendi. Okay, well, the two likely candidates, we'll start with Lisandro Martinez. So he started 3 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 4. So he has just been with the team since 2019 and has only 7 caps, but he's 24 years old, so quite young. He recently moved to Manchester United and was with Ajax in Netherlands before that, from 2019 to 22. And prior to that, he was with um, clubs in Argentina, including Newell's Old Boys there. And his first tournament was the 2021 Copa America, but he only appeared in game 4 there. So a kind of a bench player, because game 4 was they had already passed the group stage, so they didn't need to win, so they fielded a B team. So that's Lisandro Martinelli, and I probably should have put German Pezzella above him, because German Pezzella has played a few more games since the 2021 Copa America. He's played 5 of their 13 games and was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. So he's also been with the team a bit longer. So German Pezzella has been with Argentina since 2017 and has 30 caps and 2 goals. And he plays for Real Betis in Spain and was with Fiorentina in Italy before that. Actually, his current stint is his second with Real Betis. And he played for River Plate in Argentina, moving to Europe in 2015. His first tournament, well, he was actually selected for the preliminary squad in 2018 for the World Cup, but he didn't make the final cup. So his first tournament was the 2019 Copa America, where he was a starter. However, in the 2021 Copa America, he was just a sub. So he subbed into games, into 2 games anyway. Oh, no, sorry, he started as a sub, but he did gain a starting position for games 3, 4, 5, and 6. So kind of earned a starting position there. So German Pezzella, who we consider a likely candidate. Moving on to the possible candidates, Luca Martinez Corta started 1 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 5, but he wasn't selected for 5 matches, including the last 2. He's been with the team since 2019 and has 11 caps and is 26 years old, and he plays for Fiorentina in Italy since 2020. He was with River Plate in Argentina before that, from the start of his kind of senior career. So it looks like the 2019 Copa America came too early for him, but in 2021 he started. He was a starter. However, he lost his starting position after that. So it was just 1 game that he started there. So as we see, since then he's only started 1 game, so a bit on the sidelines for sure there, but a possible candidate. We also have Christian Romero, and he started 6 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. He was out with 2 separate suspensions for 3 games and under quarantine for 1 and injured for 2. So he's had a bit of a rough ride of it, and he wasn't selected for the last game. So actually, it was really those. It was really that kind of string of reasons that make us a bit uncertain about his position with the squad now, having missed so many games and not being selected for the last one. So he could actually be a likely candidate, but the evidence forces us to just say possible. So Christian Romero's been with Argentina just since 2021, but has 11 caps and 1 goal in that time and is 24 years old. And he recently moved to Tottenham in England. So he plays for Spurs and was with Atalanta in Italy before that. He actually was loaned to Tottenham before actually signing with them. Before Atalanta, he was with Juventus in Italy, and then Genoa in Italy before that. So he actually moved from Belgrano, his Argentina team, in 2018 and has been in Europe ever since, so doing quite well. So having read through that biography, I think at least I'll push him up to the top of the possible list. And we may get some light on his standing with the team in these upcoming games before the World Cup. Okay, Marco Senesi is our last possible candidate. And well, his first and only appearance was as a substitute in June 2022. So that's basically their last game there. So that was his first and only cap, and he's 25 years old, though. He recently moved to Bournemouth in England, who were promoted to the Premier League. And prior to that, he was with Feyenoord in the Netherlands from 2019 to 2022. He was with San Lorenzo in Argentina prior to that. So again, a bit difficult to know what to make of a player who has just recently joined the team. But again, the upcoming games in September and October may give us a better indication. Finally, we have Facundo Medina. So he started one of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. However, he wasn't selected for any others. So he got his first cap in 2020, so now has 2 caps. And the 24-year-old plays for Lens in France since 2020, but hasn't played for the team recently. So seems to be off the squad, and they certainly seem to have enough central defenders that they're not really fishing around for one. So let's finish this section by talking about the situation with central defenders. So mostly it's been Otamendi and someone else. So that someone else could be Lisandro Martinez, Pizzelli, or Romero. But there has been a lot of rotation in central defense, and Otamendi isn't there all the time. Pizzella played a bit more at the beginning of qualifying and at the end of qualifying, but Christian Romero had a long stretch in the middle, and Lisandro was kind of in and out. And just to kind of emphasize the rotation, over the 2 kind of friendly games, all 4 of them started, so 2 in one and 2 in the other. So whether that rotation is on purpose, maybe to keep them fresh, or because they haven't really finalized who the starters are, is difficult to say. But it seems like more teams are kind of going with a rotation of players rather than starting the 2 players all the time. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the World Cup. Okay, that's it for central defenders. And I just need a moment to have a sip of water here. All right, sorry about that. Let's move on to left backs. And for left backs, we have a likely candidate in Marcos Acuna. So no definite candidate there, and you'll see why shortly. And a likely candidate in Nicolas Tagliafico. And that's it. That's all we have for designated left back. So let's begin with Marcos Acuna. He started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1. He was injured for 2 games. He's been with Argentina since 2016 and has 42 caps, and is 31 years old. He plays for Sevilla in Spain and was with Sporting Lisbon in Portugal before that, and with Racing Club in Argentina prior to that. So he moved in 2017 over to Europe. He was on the World Cup 2018 squad, but he only appeared in game 2 that he started and finished, but otherwise didn't appear. And he was also a sub in the 2019 Copa America, but after game 3, he gained a starting position for games 4 and 5, and then he was suspended for game 6. In the 2021 Copa America, he started 4 of the 7 games and was on the bench otherwise. And you'll see he was basically rotating the position with Tagliafico. So Marcos Acuna, a likely candidate, but so is Nicolas Tagliafico. Tagliafico started 5 of their games, so basically Acuna started 8 and he started the other 5, and he was on the bench for otherwise, except for a couple of games. He's been with Argentina since 2017 and has 40 caps and is 30 years old, so a very similar record to Acuna there. He plays for Lyon in France, and that's a recent move from Ajax in the Netherlands, where he was from 2018, and he was with clubs in Argentina prior to that, moving over to Europe there. Actually, he had done a loan spell in Spain before that. Anyway, his first tournament was the 2018 World Cup, where he was a starter, starting all of the games. And same in 2019, he was a starter in all of the games. So you can see actually Tagliafico seemed to have that position nailed down for a while. And it's only recently that Marcos Acuna, is kind of sharing the position. Tagliafico started in the Copa America 2021, but as we saw, they pretty much alternated games, he and Acuna, and there don't seem any other candidates in that position. So, I was going to summarize by describing the situation, but I already did. It's basically one of alternating between the two, with no other candidates really in the picture for left back. Let's move on to right back, and we have Nahuel Molina as a definite candidate, and Gonzalo Montiel as a likely candidate, and Juan Foyth as a possible candidate. So we'll go back to Nahuel Molina. He started 11 of their 13 games in this position, so seems to have it pretty much sewn up. He was on the bench for the 2 others. He's been with the team just since 2021, so he kind of quickly assumed the position. Since 2021, has 17 caps with the squad and is just 24 years old. He plays for Atletico Madrid in Spain. That's a recent move from Udinese, who he was with since 2020, and then he was with Boca in Argentina prior to that, prior to moving to Europe. So the 2021 was his first Copa America, but he hadn't secured the position by that point. He was subbed into game 1 and then gained a starting position for most of the remaining games there. So yes, okay, so we'll move on to the likely candidate next, and that is Gonzalo Montiel. And Gonzalo Montiel started 2 of their 13 games, so basically the 2 games that Molina didn't start, and he was subbed in for 1, but he was on the bench for 8 of them. Seems like the definite backup here. He's been with Argentina since 2019 and has 16 caps and is 25 years old. And he plays for Sevilla in Spain since 2021, and he was with River Plate in Argentina before that. So in the 2021 Copa America, he was actually the starter. So we see that actually he and Molina kind of shared the position, but now Molina seems to have taken it over as the starter, leaving Montiel as the backup there. Finally, we have Juan Foyth. And Juan Foyth returned after a 9-month absence to start. He actually didn't start any of the 4 remaining games when he returned, but he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. So making a bit of a comeback there. He's been on the team since 2018 and has 15 caps and is 24 years old. And he plays for Villarreal in Spain and was with Tottenham in England from 2017 to 2020, basically, because he was loaned to Villarreal after that. And he was with Estudiantes in Argentina just for a year before moving to the European leagues. So in 2019, he didn't appear in games 1 and 3, but he did gain a starting position in that cup. However, he lined up as a central defender in game 3 and then as a left back in games 4 to 6. So kind of made inroads in 2019. However, he wasn't selected for the Copa America 2021, and as we saw, kind of was off the team for a while before recently making a comeback. So a possible candidate there in Juan Foyth. So looking at the right back position, it was actually I think Marcus Rojo who was in the position before 2019, and at the left back, left back position, Gabriel Mercado was kind of there before Acuna and Tagliafico kind of came into the picture. So again, most of these guys, both left back and right back, are fairly new in the picture, but it looks like Molina does have the starting position now. So Molina and Montiel alternated in the cup, but in World Cup qualifying, Molina kind of seemed to take over the position. Okay, that is it for defense. And we will move on to midfielders. And there are no actually general or versatile midfielders. Sometimes there's a player in that category. And indeed for Argentina, no players coded as defensive midfielders. So it'll be central midfielders who will play that role. The more defensive side of the role in particular. So we begin with a definite candidate in Leandro Paredes, but he is injured, so we have to also put him on the injury list. And in fact, he's at risk of not coming back, but we'll talk about that. We have as a likely candidate Guido Rodriguez and Ezequiel Palacios as likely also. And then Alexis McAllister, kind of new to the squad, as a possible candidate, and Nicolas Dominguez as possible but unlikely. So let's go back and we'll talk about Leandro Paredes. And he started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. But he was suspended for 2 separate games, and then he was out with 2 separate injuries that covered 3 games. And these included a torn muscle for the last 2 matches. And those matches were in June, though, but I still see that he's still on the injured list, and his return date is unknown. So he's in danger of not making the cup. And that would be a big loss for them. I'll talk about his bio information. So he's been with Argentina since 2017 and has 44 caps and 4 goals in that period. He's 28 years old. But he's one of their bigger stars playing for Saint-Germain, Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2019, although recently he's been loaned to Juventus in in Italy, and he played for Zenit St. Petersburg in Russia and Roma in Italy, having moved over in 2015 from Boca Juniors in Argentina, actually 2014, because he was loaned out. Now, even though he started with the team in 2017, he didn't make the World Cup squad. He just made the preliminary squad for the 2018 World Cup. But he was a starter by the time the Copa America came around in 2019, and started all the games there, and started actually just the odd number games in the 2021 Copa America. So it looks like he was being rotated with someone there. Again, I do see rotation as kind of coming into fashion. But all that may be meaningless if he's injured for this cup. Otherwise, we would consider him a definite candidate, Leandro Paredes. So we'll keep an eye on that, especially in the update podcast. A likely candidate is Guido Rodriguez. So he started 4 of their games since the 2021 Copa America, and he subbed into 4 besides and was on the bench for 4. So there was only 1 game that he wasn't selected for. He's been with the squad since 2017, and he has 24 caps and 1 goal. He's 28 years old. He plays for Real Betis in Spain too, and interestingly was with Club America in Mexico before that, and played for them and for Tijuana in Mexico from 2016, having moved to Mexico from River Plate in Argentina. So he was on the squad for the 2019 Copa America, but he started game 1 there and lost his starting position, and didn't appear for the rest of the tournament. Nevertheless, he was called up for the 2021 Copa America, where he didn't start games 1, but he started the rest of the group stage games, and was just a sub in the final stage games there. So Guido Rodriguez, more of a sub in the central midfield position, never seems to have really clung on to a starting position there. Ezequiel Palacios, we consider a likely candidate, even though he didn't start any of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. However, he was subbed in for 8 and on the bench for 3, and was injured for the other 2. So he was always called up when he was available. He's been with Argentina since 2018 and has 20 caps. He's 24 years old, and he's playing for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany since 2020. And he was with River Plate in Argentina before that. Actually, he was selected for the 2019 Copa America, but he was injured before the tournament. So he was replaced by Guido Pizarro just before the tournament there. He did also make it to the squad for the 2021 Copa America, but was just a substitute there. And but again, he also seems to be firmly entrenched as a substitute, so we consider him likely. Of course, if Leandro Paredes is injured for the cup, it could open the door for both of those guys to be starters, or the relative newcomer Alexis McAllister. So actually, not as new as all that. He got his first cap in 2019, but then was absent from the team for a while until he came back in 2022 and started 3 of their last 4 games and was on the bench for the other one. So kind of suddenly inserted into the squad. He didn't make the squad for the 2019 or the 2021 Copa America. So if he's selected, this would be his first tournament. So 2019 was his first cap, and he has only 5 caps there and is 24 years old. And he plays for Brighton in England and is actually with Brighton since 2019, but he was loaned back to a couple of clubs in Argentina until 2020, when he started actually playing for Brighton. The last candidate is Nicolas Dominguez, and we consider him possible but unlikely. He started none of their 13 games since the Copa America in 2021, but he was subbed in for one and on the bench for one. So he's been on the squad since 2019 and has 11 caps and 1 goal, the 24-year-old. He plays for Bologna in Italy, but actually was loaned back to the club he was with in Argentina, Vélez Sarsfield, in 2019 and 20, but is now playing for Bologna. So he was on the squad in the 2021 Copa America, but just as a sub. He subbed into a couple of games there, and as we saw hasn't been called up very much after that. So that is it for central midfielders, and we'll talk about how this position has been going. So basically, Leandro Paredes and Guido Rodriguez alternated, or else they played together during the Cup. However, De Paul, who is usually further upfield, comes into the position, comes back in the position. Rodrigo De Paul, who's technically a right midfielder, kind of replacing Guido Rodriguez, or kind of edging him out. Sorry, I lost my spot briefly. So it was much more Paredes than Rodriguez in World Cup qualifying, but when they did use 2 central midfielders, it was actually often Rodrigo De Paul who was used. And McAllister has shown up here and there, but hasn't really worked his way onto the squad. Again, we saw it was really just at the end in the last few games in June 2022, where McAllister made his way into the team. So a little difficult to say what they're going to do there, especially if Paredes is injured. But this is a position where players from other positions, as we saw, like De Paul, might come back and play in. But considering that they have no defensive midfielders, it looks like they could use a couple of other players in that position. Let's move over to left midfielders, and we'll begin with Giovanni Lo Celso as a definite candidate. And actually, he's the only candidate in this position. But again, players in the midfield tend to move around a bit more. So we'll talk about the position a bit later. We'll talk about him. He started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America and was subbed in for one and on the bench for one. He got a little suspension for 2 games there and was under quarantine for one other. So they seem to pick him when he's available. He's been with Argentina since 2017 and has 39 caps and 2 goals. And is 26 years old. So he plays for Tottenham in England, or at least he's on their roster since 2020, but currently he's on loan to Villarreal in Spain. And he played in Spain before that with Real Betis. They actually loaned him to Tottenham. And prior to that, he was with Paris Saint-Germain in France. So he's been around. He moved over from Rosario Central in 2016, the Argentina club he was with. So for the World Cup in 2018, he was on the roster, but he didn't get any field time there. But he did in 2019, where he was actually a starter for the group stage games, but he lost his starting position after that. And then was kind of in and out, a substitute for games 4 and 5, but made it back in a starter in game 6 there. That would be the final in the Copa America. And in 2021, also he started most games, but missed games 3 and 4. There, he actually subbed into game 4, but he wasn't a starter for those. He got 3 yellow cards in that tournament, but managed to avoid suspension. So Giovanni Lo Celso, we'll probably see him on the pitch. However, we might see him a bit higher up the pitch, like in the role of a left attacking midfielder or as a left winger. And he's even moved over to the right a couple of times. So I'll describe the situation. In the cup, it's, when they have a left midfielder, it's most often Lo Celso, but actually Papu Gomez, who's a more attacking player, sometimes comes into the position, especially when it's a 4-2-3-1 formation. So Lo Celso, especially in the first half of World Cup qualifying, and then after that, it started mixing up a bit, actually, with Papu Gomez or even McAllister at the end there, playing twice, 2 games on the left side. So Joaquin Correa also played in the position once. So it's a bit fluid, filled by various players. The situation is the same on the right midfield, where we only have one candidate who we consider a definite candidate, and I've mentioned him already. It's Rodrigo de Paul, who we sometimes saw coming back into central defence, especially when it's a 3-man kind of midfield. Rodrigo de Paul had started 12 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and the one he missed, he was suspended for. So he's a definite starter here. He's been with Argentina since 2018, and he has 41 caps and 2 goals, and is 28 years old. So he plays for Atletico Madrid in Spain since 2021, and was with Udinese in Italy for 5 years before that, and Valencia in Spain from 2014. He was with Racing Club. I'm tempted to say Racing because I'm English, but I've heard it pronounced Racing. Racing Club in Argentina. He moved over in 2014, but was actually loaned back for a spell from Valencia during his time at Valencia, but has been in Europe basically since around 2015. He was selected for the 2019 Copa America, where he was subbed into game 1 at halftime and then gained the starting position in that cup. So he was really praised by the announcers for his workmanship there. Unspectacular, but upon analysis, the kind of very hard-working style. And in the 2021 Copa America, he started also, missed games 3 and 4 there too, actually just subbed into game 3 rather than missing it, but not a starter in those games. He actually missed a penalty in the shootout against Colombia there, but they nevertheless won the shootout, and he was named to the team of the tournament in 2021. So a much praised player, and we can see that in that he's often chosen as a starter. So again, we'll summarize the right midfielder position as a closing. So when it's a true right midfielder position, he's usually there. But if it's a more attacking position, like a winger or attacking midfielder, it'll be another player, usually Di Maria recently. As it went, he's kind of moved back into the central midfielder, more than moving up as an attacking midfielder, again, depending on the formation there. Okay, we'll move on to left wingers. So so this would be kind of more attacking and perhaps a little bit more wide. And we have Papu Gomez as a likely candidate, and we have Lucas Ocampos as a possible candidate, and Eduardo Salvio as seemingly off the team. So just three candidates here. And Papu Gomez has started 4 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2 and injured for 2. So there was only 2 games that he wasn't selected for. He's been with Argentina since 2017, but he only has 14 caps and 3 goals. So doesn't seem like a starter yet. And he doesn't have a lot of time left in him because he's 34 years old. He plays for Sevilla in Spain since 2020. I just want to check that because I thought he was a bit younger. No, 34 years old. And he plays for Sevilla in Spain now, was with Atalanta in Italy for 7 years, and also played in the Ukraine. So for Metalist Kharkiv in Ukraine for a little while. And he was actually absent from the team prior to 2020 for a few years. So despite getting his first cap in 2017, he wasn't a consideration for the 2018 World Cup or the 2019 Copa America. He'd been off the team for a little while by then, but made a comeback and made the squad for the 2021 World Copa America, where he was a substitute, but he did start 2 games 3 and 4 there. And he tends to line up as more of an attacking midfielder there, which is supported by his left winger designation, I suppose. And he scored 2 of their 12 goals in the 2021 Copa America. There. However, it didn't seem to earn him a starting spot, as he's, kind of been on the edge of a starter, but not quite, both during the Cup and after. So Papu Gomez, but a likely candidate nevertheless to make the squad. Lucas Ocampos is a possible candidate. He actually returned to the squad after an 8-month absence in February 2022. So he was kind of off the squad when the 2021 Copa America squad was being decided, and he's only started 1 game, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1, so barely making the squad here. He's been with Argentina since 2019, and he has earned 10 caps and 2 goals. And is 28 years old. So he, like Papu Gomez, plays for Sevilla in Spain. However, he's been loaned out to Ajax in the Netherlands. That was a recent move. He was with Marseille in France before that, where he was loaned to AC Milan, and played in River Plate in Argentina until 2012 when he moved over to Europe. So he's never actually made a squad, Lucas Ocampos, despite all those good club affiliations, although you have to wonder what it means that he was loaned out quite a bit. So a possible candidate to make the squad, based more on his recent participation than on his club status. Eduardo Salvio last appeared for the national team in October 2020. But he was a starter in the World Cup, actually, started games 1 and 2, but lost his starting position there and wasn't selected for the 2019 or 2021 Copa America. But he was, still called up once in a while until 2020. He's just 32 years old, so not particularly old, and he's with Pumas in Mexico. That was a recent move from Boca in Argentina, but he was with some big European clubs before that, especially Benfica and Atletico Madrid. So his fortunes have fallen, I guess you could say, since about 2019 and 18, where he was a World Cup starter. And now he seems to be off the team. So we don't think he's going to make the Cup. Okay, so the situation in summary on the left wing is Lo Celso, but Lo Celso is usually kind of a bit further back, so more of a left midfielder, although he did play as a left winger once. When it's a more attacking position, though, as I said, Papu Gomez and Nicolas Gonzalez kind of move into the position. And sometimes it's both of them. So in a 4-3-3, for example, Lo Celso will be on the left in the midfield, and Gonzalez will be the left forward. So that roughly has been the situation through World Cup qualifying. Although, Gomez has become a bit defensive once in a while, but the positions kind of bleed into each other. But when it's a very attacking position like a left forward, it's usually Nicolas Gonzalez. And Lucas Ocampos did kind of step in for one game towards the end there, so making himself a possible candidate, but really hasn't been around that much. Okay, let's move over to the right wing, and we have a big name in Angel Di Maria, who we consider a definite candidate, and Joaquin Correa, who we also consider definite, and we have Emiliano Buendia as a possible but unlikely candidate. So we go back to Angel Di Maria, a veteran, and kind of like Nicolas Otamendi. He looked like he was kind of aging out during his time in England, but it seemed like when he went abroad, he kind of got refreshed. So he was drifting off the Argentina squad, as we'll see. But now seems to be firmly ensconced. He scored the winner in the final of the 2021 Copa America to beat Brazil. But I'll start where I usually start. He started 9 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he subbed in for 2 and was on the bench for 2. So always called up. I say he might be aging out because he's 34 years old, which for an attacking player, it seems like a central defender like Otamendi has a couple of more years that they can play. But as an attacking player, 34 is getting pretty old. He's been on Argentina's squad since 2008 and has 122 caps and 25 goals. And he's currently playing for Juventus in Italy. That's a recent move. He was with Paris Saint-Germain in France from 2015 to 2022. So maybe my aging out comment will be really offensive because he was actually with Man United in England from 2014 to 15. Maybe it's more accurate to say that he didn't shine there as much as he has as in other places like Real Madrid in Spain, who he was with before Man United, and Benfica in Portugal. So he's been on the national team. Actually was with the Olympic team in 2008 and was on the World Cup 2010 squad. So I won't go through it slowly. For most of the tournaments, he's been a starter, but he was a sub in the 2011 Copa America and also in the 2019 Copa America. This is what made me feel like he was aging out. He started game 1, but he was subbed out at halftime there and lost his starting position, where he was basically just a substitute. And then in the 2021 Copa America, he was also a substitute. Even in the except for game 3, which was a kind of a slightly B-team game. But in the final, he was started. So he kind of earned himself a starting position, and the manager made a good decision because he scored the only goal of the final, as I've said. So really kind of proved himself there, and seemingly so at the club level too, to the point where he basically regained his starting position in the games leading up to this World Cup. So a bit of a concern that he's 34 years old, but if he's still showing the capability, Argentina will bring him, because in fact they do have several older players who seem to be still performing well. We'll get to that after the player-by-player discussion. Okay, moving on to Joaquin Correa. So he started just 3 of their 13 games, so you may be surprised we consider him a definite candidate. However, he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 1 other, so kind of there for 10 of the 13 games and injured for 2 of them. And he's been with the team since 2017, only has 18 caps and 3 goals in that time, so not really getting onto the field that much, but is 28 years old and plays for Inter Milan in Italy. That was actually a recent move and a bit of a move up, because it was with Lazio, a slightly smaller club in Italy before that, and Sevilla in Spain before that. So Joaquin Correa didn't make any tournaments before the 2021 Copa America, and even there he was a substitute. So has never really kind of made his name onto the squad, and yet we have him. I'm almost thinking I should move him down to likely, but he always seems to be called up, even if it is as a substitute or kind of a backup player. Getting a few starts, but I wouldn't say a starter by any means. Emiliano Buenda got his first cap in February 2022, and he didn't start any of the remaining 5 games there, but he was subbed in for 1. Although he was suspended for 2, so he might have been called up if he had been available. That 1 cap is his only cap, his first one being in 2022, and he's 26 years old, so a bit of a latecomer, and really just making an outside bid. He plays for Aston Villa in England and was with Norwich in England before that. And he did actually fairly well at the club level in the last couple of years, but he doesn't seem to have attracted enough attention from Argentina, who tend not to call him up. So the situation on the right wingers, I'll describe it in summary here. The situation is that Di Maria did actually play on the left for a long time for Argentina, but has recently moved back to the right side since about 2021. So it's Di Maria who has increasingly become the right attacking midfielder, or the right winger, or even the right forward. Although usually when it's 4-3-3 with a right forward, it'll be Messi stepping into the right forward position. And we've seen a couple of players come in. Nicolas Gonzalez sometimes moves over, and Julian Alvarez, who we'll talk about soon, is making his way into the team. He played the last 2 games of World Cup qualifying kind of as a right winger or a right attacking midfielder. So I should say actually as a right forward, because they were using the 4-3-3 in the most recent games. However, Julian Alvarez is categorized as an attacking midfield or as a forward, so we'll talk about him a bit later. Okay, well, we're going to move on to talking about forwards. And we begin with attacking midfielders. So we have Angel Correa as a likely candidate here, and Maximilian Metza as a possible but unlikely, and also possible but unlikely Manuel Lanzini. Okay, so Angel Correa didn't start any of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 4. So just not selected for 3 others, but 2 of those were the last 2 matches. So I'm not sure if that's significant. Angel Correa has been with Argentina since 2015 and has 20 caps and 3 goals and is 27 years old. And he plays for Atletico Madrid in Spain and has done so since 2015. That was after he moved over from San Lorenzo in Argentina, where he spent the first 2 years of his senior career. So despite being with the team since 2015, he didn't get called up for a tournament until 2021. He was on the preliminary squad in 2016, but didn't make the final cut. And otherwise, so 2021 was his first tournament, and he was only a sub in that tournament and has been a sub on the bench ever since. So not many starts for him, especially in recent times. The next candidate is Maximilian Metza, and he returned actually after a more than 3-year absence in February 2022 and didn't start any of their remaining 5 games. But was, I believe, on the bench for 4 games. He may be subbed in. I didn't write the information correctly there. Anyway, he's been on the team since 2018 and has 11 caps and no goals, though, and is 30 years old. And he's currently playing for Monterrey in Mexico and has done so since 2019 and was with Independiente in Argentina before that, so always in Argentina prior to moving to Mexico. He was a starter actually in the World Cup 2018, started games 1 and 2, but then he lost his starting position and was only used as a substitute after that. And he didn't make the squad in 2019, and by 2021 actually he was kind of out of the picture. As I said, he returned after a 3-year absence in 2022. So there we go. He was actually on the preliminary squad for 2019 and didn't make the cut. Manuel Lanzini had returned also from an absence, a 2.5-year absence when he showed up again in March 2022, but he also didn't start any of their remaining games. Just on the bench for 2 games towards the end there, and he has never made a tournament. Actually, he was selected for the 2018 World Cup, but then was injured and replaced by Enzo Perez. He plays for West Ham in England since 2016 and was actually with Al Jazeera in the United Arab Emirates prior to that, but not really being called up much here, so an unlikely candidate in our view. So that covers the attacking midfielder role. I'll just talk about that role a bit. It really only the position really only exists in a 4-2-3-1, which Argentina doesn't often use. When they do use it, it'll usually be it's Messi in the role of the attacking midfielder, and forward Dybala also played the position once actually when Messi wasn't available, and McAllister played that position in the second last game of World Cup qualifying, but again, the position is not really used that much. We don't have any players designated as secondary strikers on Argentina. So we move on to forwards. And Lionel Messi is the first candidate we have. I would say, if you've ever heard of that guy before, he is a definite candidate for the Argentina team. And also definite is Nicolas Gonzalez. And likely is Julian Alvarez. And Lautaro Martinez. I'm actually going to put Lautaro Martinez ahead of Julian Alvarez there. And we also have Paulo Diabla, but he is just a possible candidate here. Sorry, Diabala. And then we have a few possible but unlikely candidates in Lucas Alario, possible but unlikely, Lucas Boy, and Giovanni Simeone. And we also have one player basically retiring, Sergio Aguero, also a familiar name. So let's go through these players. Well, I could regale you with Lionel Messi data and stories and wonderful plays, for a couple of more hours. So I'll try to keep it reasonably short here. Lionel Messi is the captain, and he's been with the team since 2005 and has 162 caps and 86 goals. So a lot of games, and averaging a goal every 2 games, which is a very high average. And he's 35 years old now. And I should have told you why he's definite, because I usually start with that. He started 10 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. He was subbed in for 1 and not selected for 2 others. So sometimes they rest him. Okay, well, I gave you the bio data. And in terms of clubs, he moved to Paris Saint-Germain in France in 2021, but was with Barcelona for many, many years before that, from 2004 to 2021, and he was with the Barcelona Youth Club since 2000. Prior to that, he was with Newell's Old Boys Youth Club in Argentina. So, of course, he's been involved in every tournament since he kind of came onto the scene, and the World Cup 2006 was his first tournament. Interestingly, he was just a substitute there. 2006 would have made him 19 years old, but ever since then he's a starter for the team, and I believe it was 2014 where he became captain of the team. So very impressive in most of his tournaments, and all the way up to the he's never missed a tournament, and all the way up to the 2021 World Cup, Copa America, where he was again captain, started and finished all games, and scored 4 of their 12 goals in that tournament. So that was a very good tournament for him, particularly good. He's usually, I won't get into long stories about him. Anyway, he won the Golden Ball Award for the 2021 Copa America. That's the best player of the tournament, and was co-winner of the Golden Boot Award with his 4 goals. There. So Lionel Messi, a definite candidate, and he's coded as a forward, but we'll see. He plays sometimes as a centre forward, but sometimes as an attacking midfielder, or on the outside of a 3-man forward line there. So like Lionel Messi. Let's move on to Nicolas Gonzalez. So he started 4 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 1. So the other 2 games he was out with coronavirus. So it seems like even though he doesn't always start, he's always called up, recently at least. Actually, 2019 was his first cap, and since then he's earned 21 caps and 3 goals. So he's 24 years old. He plays for Fiorentina in Italy, and he moved there from Stuttgart in Germany in 2021. And he played for Stuttgart 2018 to 21 and with Argentinos Juniors prior to that, including their youth club for a long time, ever since he was 7 years old. However, the 2021 Copa America was his first tournament, so he started 4 of the games there, and also subbed into the final. He didn't score any goals in that tournament, though, despite having a lot of chances. Nicolas Gonzalez, a definite candidate. Now, you may be surprised that Lautaro Martinez is just considered a likely candidate here. I don't really agree with that. He started 9 of their 13 matches since the 2021 Copa America, and he was out with coronavirus for 2 matches, and not selected for 2 matches, including the last match. I think that's why I moved him from a definite to a likely, because he wasn't there for the last match, but that might be overstating the case, because I think he will be there. Lautaro Martinez, and probably a starter too. Lautaro Martinez has been with Argentina since 2018 and has 38 caps and 20 goals. So a similar ratio to Lionel Messi there, almost a goal every 2 games. And he is 25 years old. He plays for Inter Milan in Italy, and he's done so since 2018. And that was after he moved over from Racing Club in Argentina, where he was basically started his senior career with them in 2015. So he didn't make the World Cup 2018 squad. He was on the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut. And in 2019, he didn't appear in game 1, but he gained a starting position for the rest of the tournament there. Except for game 6, where he was suspended, actually. In 2021, he also started most of the games, games 3 and 4. Again, they were against weak teams, and they didn't really need their best players for both of those games. So perhaps that was the reason he didn't start. But that tournament, he kind of came into his own, where he scored 3 of their 12 goals. And played well in the tournament in general. In terms of qualifying, he scored 7 of their 27 goals. By comparison, I didn't mention, but Lionel Messi also scored 7 of their 27 goals in qualifying. So together they make up for more than half the goals that got them into this cup. So I'd almost say a definite candidate for Lautaro Martinez there. He's kind of the center forward, whereas Nicolas Gonzalez is on the left and Messi on the right, for the most part. We also, though, have Julian Alvarez as a likely candidate, even though he just started 2 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. He was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 4. So just 2 times that he wasn't called up. And he's new to the team since 2021, has 9 caps and 1 goal, and is 22 years old. But we won't say he's new to the team, because he did make the Copa America squad in 2021. I'll come back to that. I'll just give his club history. Recently has moved to Manchester City in England since 2022. So he'll really have to prove himself to get a starting position there, especially with Haaland as the current forward. But prior to that, he was with River Plate in Argentina. And he was on the squad for the 2021 Copa America, but only appeared in the B team game there, game 4. So yeah, a bit of trouble getting onto the field for Argentina too, since they have several good forwards. Paulo Dybala started one of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America and was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2. He was also injured for 4 games, so that was just 2 games where he wasn't called up. And he's been with the squad since 2015 and has 32 caps and 2 goals and is 29 years old now. He recently moved to Roma in Italy in 2022 and was with Juventus for 7 years before that, and then a smaller Italian club, Palermo. That was the first European club after he moved over from Argentina, with a club called Instituto, which I'm not that familiar with, but that's who his youth club was and the club he kind of started his senior career. So always a bit of trouble working his way into the starting lineup. He was in the World Cup 2018, but just appeared in game 2 as a substitute there. And he was also a substitute in the 2019 Copa America. And didn't even make the squad for the 2021 Copa America. So I'm not sure what's going on, but he did come back, as we saw, after the Copa America to play some of their World Cup qualifying games. So in a bit of a flux, and we're not really sure if he'll make the Cup. So we have him as a possible candidate. Then we have 3 possible but unlikely candidates. So the first one is Lucas Alario. He didn't start any of their games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was on the bench for 2 games. He's never actually made a squad for any tournament, even though he's been on the team since 2016. He has 9 caps and 3 goals, 29 years old, and plays for Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany, who's doing well, actually, having moved from Bayer Leverkusen before that. So doing well with European clubs, but not so much with the national team. Actually, he was selected for the final squad in 2021, but he suffered an injury, a thigh injury, and he was replaced by Julian Alvarez there. So maybe he'll make his way back in, but he hasn't managed to do so during World Cup qualifying much. Lucas Boy is got his first cap in March 2022, and there were 4 games remaining after that. He subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 1. And he plays for Elche in Spain. Giovanni Simeone was a candidate, I guess, since 2018, but he only has 5 caps and 1 goal, and he hasn't appeared since October 2020. So I did get one hint that he was making his way back onto the team, but it was just a slight hint. So we'll wait for the update podcast to see if that comes to any fruition. Let's talk a little bit about retired players. So Argentina actually doesn't have a lot of big names retiring recently, just really Sergio Aguero, maybe the goalkeeper Marquinhos could be, but Marquinhos didn't play that many games, whereas Sergio Aguero has over 100 caps for Argentina. So I would say a big loss, except he's kind of been drifting out of the picture for a little while now. His last appearance was in the 2021 Copa America, but there he was kind of injured and struggling, so he only subbed into a couple of games and really didn't make an impression other than getting a red card for a vicious stomping tackle against Colombia. So that's not a great claim to fame, but really not on the squad. So I won't go over his history that much. He's actually he was with Manchester City, as many will know, for 10 years, from 2011 to 2021, and then he moved back to Barcelona in Spain. Oh yes, he's actually retired. He was kind of forced into retirement. So he played for Barcelona for a year, and I think I read a story about him having a bit of heart trouble or pain in his chest, cardiac arrhythmia or something, and he was forced to retire, or his doctors kind of strongly urged him to retire. And I actually do have him down as retired from club soccer here. So, yeah, well, a player with a lot of history with the Argentina team, but no point in going over it since he is definitely not going to be at the World Cup. So we'll just wave a fond farewell to Sergio Aguero. All right, well, that brings us to the end. And we will come back and go over this squad in terms of starters and substitutes. But we'll do that a bit later after we do some talk about the team. So let's move on to some discussion of the squad. And we'll start by going back to the takeaways from the podcast before the 2021 Copa America. So we said Argentina was anxious to earn a title, having, reached the finals of World Cups and many finals of Copa Americas, but somehow not managing to win a title since 1993, the last time they won the Copa America title. However, they managed to do it, and they were particularly anxious to earn a title, when Messi was on the squad. So as he kind of aged, they became kind of more and more anxious about it. And I think it's a big thing that they have now won a title. And my feeling during qualifying was they looked a lot more relaxed and comfortable as a team. So I think winning that title is very significant. Especially will affect the attitude they come in with. We talked around their conflict, kind of. Again, I'm not dead sure what the conflict was, but with the Football Association, I think, that almost caused Messi to retire. That seems well behind them now. And so both of these factors, earning a title and overcoming whatever conflict that was, is significant in that they seem a lot more comfortable. And the third prong of that fork is too much Messi. Well, you could have a long discussion about whether, that was the problem and part of the reason they didn't win a cup for a long time. But certainly things seem to be sorted out because, again, I don't think it was Messi kind of demanding the ball. He seems a fairly humble player on the field. But I think it's just he's such a big name that, people look up and think, oh, I better pass it to Messi, and he can make the best of it. I think now what we saw during qualification and even during Copa America is the talents of other players coming out. Perhaps Angel Di Maria. That's part of the reason maybe he came back to the squad is that other players are shining more, not at the expense of Messi, but kind of all of their boats rising as the team improves as a whole. And it doesn't seem to be rotating around Messi, even though he is at the center of a lot of plays. It doesn't seem to be players just wanting to pass the ball to him, but rather showing their own talent. There is an issue to consider also in terms of aging players, which we'll talk about a bit more specifically later. But we've seen in the player-by-player podcast that, or in the player-by-player section of the mediacast here, that we have Otamendi in defence and Di Maria and Lionel Messi, three of their biggest players, all 34 or 35 years old. And is that a concern? I mean, it doesn't seem to be because they're doing very well. But, is it possible that their age will show in the cup? Okay, well, we don't need to talk too much about club affiliations other than to say Argentina's club affiliations are fantastic. They're with most of the players are with top teams in Europe. kind of championship winning teams, like Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona. Do they have anyone with Barcelona anymore? No, they do not. Nevertheless, there's basically no kind of small teams, and sadly, none of them actually play in Argentina, except for Frank Armani, who's with River Plate. So it seems like they make more money in Europe. So if they're successful enough, they get out. They do have Julian Alvarez with Manchester City. Sergio Aguero used to play there. I mean, I could name the teams, but I'd basically be naming Champions League groups if I did that, because all of them play for those kind of teams. A couple of smaller teams like McAllister is with Brighton in England, and Emiliano Martinez is with Aston Villa. A couple of players like Betis, Feyenoord, maybe kind of second tier teams, but that would be the lowest they go. So tremendous club affiliation, which suggests tremendous talent on the team. Let's move on to talk about their age and experience. So again, I have this little kind of statistical thing that I'm working on, and I'm not sure. I'm not that confident that it's telling me all the information that I want, but let's see how it goes. So they have under consideration 43 players. So sorry, this is players called up since 2020, and this is a rough figure, because I'm sure I have a couple of mistakes in there. But players called up since 2020, they have 43. And the most interesting way to look at this is to compare it with other teams I've done. So I have about 12 teams in the mix here. Let me just check. So the average there is 52. So most teams on average are looking at about 52 candidates. Keep in mind that they will have to lower this to 26. So that means they'll basically have to cut half of them. And we'll see by this stat and by the others that Argentina really doesn't have a big problem as far as that goes. They have a fairly stable team. And so they won't have a lot of difficult decisions to make. I'll fill in the other stats and talk more about that. Players under consideration. So this is basically the players who are definite or likely. Definite, likely, or possible players under consideration. So there are a few outside chances. There's always a couple of the unlikely players who might come into the squad and surprise us, or even a player who we haven't mentioned and isn't even on the radar yet, who, suddenly comes into good form in the last couple of months before the Cup and manages to make the team. But from what we have so far, we have 31 players under consideration, and the average is a bit higher, more like 33. So once again, we see that Argentina won't have a lot of painful cuts to make. And finally, players in definite or likely categories are 21. So, if we take those players as reaching the Cup, they would only have to add 5 players from the possible kind of category to that. So compared to a lot of teams, I should give the average. The average for that is, just give me a second, and I'll calculate it. The average for that is 22. So they're right around average for the number of definite and likely players they have. So actually that doesn't yield a lot of information. It's more informative when it's well above average or well below. But in general, Argentina is below average and has kind of a more stable group of players than other teams like the US that are still considering a lot of players and will have to make a lot of cuts. Average age is an interesting statistic because they are quite old, actually tied with Iran as the oldest average age, again, among the players who I have under consideration here. And I'll talk more about that specifically. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players who are 34 years old or older. So that's Nicolas Otamendi, Papu Gomez, Angel Di Maria, Lionel Messi, and Franco Armani. It doesn't matter that much or as much with a goalie, or arguably even with a central defender. They tend to get away with being a little bit older. And then they have a further 4 players in their 30s, so that would make 9 players in their 30s, which gives them an older average age. 27.7 is quite old. The average is usually around 25 to 27. Just let me look at my average here. I have 26.3 among the teams I've checked so far. So an older team, but sometimes I've seen older teams, what they maybe lose in kind of youthful speed, they kind of make up in maturity and experience. So it doesn't necessarily tell us that much. It is interesting, though, that Julian Alvarez at 22 is their youngest player. So they don't have any young players. So we might take this to mean that they're probably going to have to rebuild after this cup. And I have seen actually quite a few young players who have appeared on the bench or who seem to be like on the underage teams right now. So I don't think they'll have a problem rebuilding. Okay, in terms of caps, they have 30.4 on average. That includes a couple of Lionel Messi with 162 caps, Angel Di Maria with 122 caps, Otamendi has 91, and then just only 6 players who have less than 10 caps. So kind of going hand in hand with the age thing. They're a very experienced team, and their average is 30.4, and the overall average for that is 26. So they're well above average. So we could say a more experienced squad than most coming into the cups. I'm still trying to work on making the goal data a bit better, but they have 165 total goals. That works out to 5.3 per player on average. So all this kind of adds up to mean that they're a high-scoring team. Qatar is the only team that kind of beats them in this area, and they're ahead of other high-scoring teams like the Netherlands. So we can expect quite a few goals from Argentina. In terms of individual scorers, I've mentioned during the player-by-player podcast that both Messi and Lautaro Martinez have a stunning goals per game record above 50%. So you can look to those players to get most of their goals. Recently, I think that friendly they had was against Estonia, and they won 5-0 with Messi scoring all 5 goals, if I have my information right. And Angel Di Maria is about 20% in his goals average. And there are a couple of players between about 15 and 22%. And you could argue that they really haven't played enough games to make the statistic really valid. But like Lucas Ocampos has 2 goals in 10 games, but we can't confidently say he's a 20% average goal scorer. But anyway, the more than the average, which is impressive for Lautaro Martinez and Lionel Messi. Or equally impressive as that is just the sheer number of players who have above 10%. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players who have more than 10%. So I'm pretty confident that that's higher than most teams. So making the argument that Argentina is a scoring team. All right, let's move on to players and issues. Oops, I'll just add that information to the graphic because I forgot to. So 27.7 for average age, 30.4 for average cap, both of those higher than most teams. 165 total goals, which averages out to 5.3 per player, those much higher than most teams. All right, well, not a lot of issues on Argentina. There are a couple of decisions the manager has to make. One is Otamendi's age. Is that going to catch up with him? Well, it certainly hasn't seemed to. As I said during the main podcast, it kind of looked like it was catching up to him when he was at Manchester City. But he seems to have been rejuvenated after that, both with Argentina and with his club. So despite being 34 years old, he's holding down a starting position for Argentina. So it looks like that will continue into the Cup. He's the only definite we have as a central defender, which brings us to our next point. Who is the central defender who plays alongside him? Well, I said at the beginning or near the beginning of the podcast that it's becoming a bit of a fashion rather than to have the same 2 players, say, in the central defense or in the central midfield every time. Rotation is kind of becoming part of the system. So we're noticing that a lot of teams maybe have 3 central defenders who rotate in and out. And that seems to be the case with Argentina too. So even Otamendi himself doesn't play all the games. And so sometimes 2 of the other players come in, and perhaps that rotation is coming to be seen as a better way than to have 2 players, 2 or whatever the formation is, the same players playing every game. That rotation definitely seems to be the case for the left defense because Acuna and Tagliafico seem to alternate there. So maybe the manager isn't trying to find who the starter is, but rather is happy to have them alternating. That's not so much the case on the right side of defense, but on the left side, that's the way it's been for quite a while. In the midfield, McAllister has been making inroads into the team, so it'll be interesting to see if he makes it in. Right now, he's just one of the possible candidates, but he's been playing more and more, and perhaps will make it in as a central defender. We also have Di Maria's age to consider. He's 34 years old. And is that too old for a midfielder? Well, it seemed to be the case in the 2021 Copa America and with his clubs before that, because at least for Argentina, and for Man United, he was more of a substitute, so seemed to be aging out. But like Otamendi, he seemed to find a bit of freshness and has been a starter recently. In the attack, Messi's age is also a concern. 35 years old. This may be, will almost certainly be his last World Cup. Perhaps not, but 35 years old is quite old, especially for an attacking player who are expected to run a bit more. Mind you, he's wily enough that the guy has a map of what's going on the soccer pitch in his head, so he may be able to just kind of stand still and direct things for years to come. But anyway, the age of those three players, all a bit of a concern, especially in terms of after the Cup and going forward. Let's take a look at some of the new players that they have. So in defense, central defense, we have Marco Senesi. I won't repeat everything we said in the player-by-player podcast, but he's very new to the team, just one cap in 2022, so this tournament may come too soon for him. One of the younger he's 24 years old and has been on the team since 2019. So he's never made a tournament, though. One of the players kind of working his way into the team is Alexis McAllister. So I said above, it'll be interesting to see to what extent he kind of inserts himself into the lineup, perhaps even to the extent of gaining a starting position. Lucas Ocampos, a left winger or sometimes a left forward, is with Sevilla in Spain. So club affiliation wise, he looks like he belongs on the national team. And then perhaps this is a bit biased because I follow the Premier League at the club level more than other leagues. So Emiliano Buendia is a player I'm familiar with, but in fact we have him as possible but unlikely to reach the squad. So maybe I shouldn't have had his name in there at all. In terms of injuries, we really have two to consider. One is goalkeeper Juan Musso. So he has a fractured jaw, and as I said in the play-by-player podcast, he's expected to recover in mid-November. So it's a bit of a close call as to whether he'll make it or not. We had him as a likely candidate, but it may mean Rulo comes in if he's not able to make it. Maybe more concerning is Leandro Paredes, and he had a torn muscle in June, which seems to be an ongoing problem, and I'm not really sure what that means. And apparently the officials aren't either, because they have him as an unknown return date. So whether the Paris Saint-Germain player will make it back is up for grabs. We had him as a definite candidate there in the central midfield, so that will be a bit of a concern for Argentina. And in terms of notable absences, as in big players leaving the team, we really, since the 2021 World Cup, only have Sergio Aguero. There was a few more players retiring around 2019, but recently just Sergio Aguero as a noticeable absence, but they certainly seem to have the forwards to replace him, especially Lautaro Martinez and Nicolas Gonzalez, and to a lesser degree Julian Alves and Paulo Dybala. All right, well, the last thing we're going to do is predict the starters. So I'll go through the list we made in the player-by-player and talk about who I think is going to start. So Lionel Scaloni is the manager. We think he is a definite starter. I have to find the right color here. Lionel Scaloni will lead them through the cup. Emiliano Martinez. It was a bit of a concern that Armani started the last game, but I don't think that adds up to a threat. So we have Emiliano Martinez as a starter, and Armani is almost certainly going to be a substitute. And then we would have thought so for Juan Musso, except his injury will maybe open the door for Geronimo Rulli there, but we won't highlight them because we're not confident that either of them will make the team given the situation. In terms of defenders, well, the definite means Otamendi will definitely make the team. Uh, I'm not gonna say he'll be a definite starter, because what I really think will happen is that these four players actually will rotate. I think Christian Romero is going to make the team and might even be a starter. Um, and I think they're kind of going to rotate in the cup. Of them all, though, I would say, I mean, it does look like Otamendi is the most likely to be a starter, but I'm more comfortable with what we have here, just considering them. Well, that doesn't mean they're going to be substitutes, but that they'll be rotating, so kind of in and out. For left backs, again, Marcos Acuna and Nicolas Tagliafico, rather than either of them being a starter, I really think that they'll rotate as they did in the Cup and in World Cup qualifying. But definitely both of them will be there. On the other hand, on the right side, I think Molina will be the starter. But I think Gonzalo Montiel will definitely be a substitute brought to the squad and used when maybe if Molina is injured or needs a rest. Again, Leandro Paredes, we have to say he's injured and a bit of a doubt. And in the midfield, again, maybe I'm not familiar enough with the team to say so. I think Guido Rodriguez and Ezequiel Palacios will definitely be selected, but I don't see any of them as firm starters yet. In fact, Alexis McAllister might get in. And in terms of central defense, right midfielder Rodrigo de Paul, I think he'll be a starter, and he may start in central defense. So as far as central midfielders go, this is how I see it, with De Paul as a definite and Rodriguez, or De Paul as a starter, and Rodriguez and Palacios as again, not substitutes, but kind of not the regular starters, maybe sharing the role a bit. And I would even add McAllister in there too. For left midfielders, Giovanni Lo Celso. I think he will. That's a tough one. I'm not confident enough that he's going to be a starter to say so. I think he's a definite to make the squad, but they haven't used him enough, or maybe the formation that suits him enough for me to say he's a definite candidate. I'm also not confident that he'll be a substitute either, but I do see him as someone like the ones we talked above, starting some but not all of the games. So I'll just, I guess I've been using blue for that, so I might as well use blue. Angel Di Maria is almost a starter in my mind. I just kind of worry about his age, but he has started 9 of their 13 games. So I think so. I think he's really the left winger. I think I'm going to call him as the starter with a bit of hesitancy as the left winger. Sorry, he's on the right now, I said in the player-by-player podcast, playing over on the right. And as the right attacking midfielder or right forward. So I think he'll be on the field. Of course, Lionel Messi will be a starter, and I think Nicolas Gomez will also be a starter. And Lautaro Martinez. Actually, I only have him as a likely candidate to reach the cup. I was a bit worried because he missed the last match there. I'm inclined to call him a starting forward as well, but one of them would have to go because Di Maria is often starting as a forward. So maybe I'll put Lautaro as a sometimes starter. maybe I have to create a different color for someone who's definitely a substitute, because there are players who are definite to make the squad, or at least likely to make the squad, but they'll definitely be substitutes. They come in as substitutes, but they're always there. Anyway, I think that's as well as I can do for now, and maybe we can rethink a little bit using information we get from the September and October games, and maybe improve our prediction a little bit more. But for now, that's it. And keep in mind that we will be doing that update podcast probably in early to mid-November. And we will be able to tell you at that time who made the preliminary squad and the final squad. We'll also do a team update. So you can look forward to that, and keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. That's our web address is soccerphiles.captivate.fm. That's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And you can also check show notes, which I've been improving. Show notes, and it has links and it has timestamps for this podcast, and all sorts of stuff for you to look at and help you to dig deeper into all of this. So thank you for listening, and we will see you in our next player podcast. Bye-bye.